government shutdown has now lasted 41 days. It could be coming to an end very soon after the Senate advanced a bill that would fund the government through January of 2026. Several Democratic senators joined the Republicans for a 60-40 vote in favor of the bill. Let's bring in Henrietta Treyz, Veda Partners Managing Partner and Director of Economic Policy, to talk more about this. Henrietta, how close are we in your view right now, and what's the sort of timeline that we're looking at?
We are on the goal line at this point. We're almost done. It'll only take, let's call it 48 more hours, and we should be behind the America's longest government shutdown. So very exciting for all of us who want to travel for the holidays. It's almost over.
So, Henrietta, we always talk about these shutdowns as the various pressure points that are being brought to bear, right? And in this case, there were a lot of pressure points, right? There were sort of temporary layoffs that the president talked about making permanent. There were SNAP benefits and the battle back and forth about whether those were going to be paid out. And then, of course, last but not least, there's what's going on at America's airports, where we saw that dramatic curtailment in flights. In your view, was it cumulative? Was there one thing? I mean, what do you think finally got everybody to the table here?
What always was on my mind since October 1st when this started was, when's the next recess? And the next recess is right now, the Veterans Day recess, where they're supposed to be gone for 10 days starting on Friday of last week. So it's always helpful to keep the calendar in mind. I tell clients that all the time, but you're exactly right. It's this culmination of all these events. You can go back to the No Kings rally with 7 million people across the country. You can go to last Tuesday's election, which was, a very big momentum event for the Democratic Party. You can go to the discussion of SNAP, which I think was really instrumental, not to keep harping on and picking on the president here, but his approval rating throughout the course of this shutdown was cut in half. Or doubled rather. It got 7 points worse than it was when it started. And that was largely driven by the food stamp discussion, knowing that the president was actively suing to make sure that SNAP could not go out. The furloughs of 700,000 employees across the country, disproportionately in the state of Virginia, where, of course, there was a very important governor's race and the Republicans lost by double digits. So net, it took time. It required the calendar. It required members wanting to be on recess. The TSA and FAA stuff really helped. We're finally there, though.
Speaking of the calendar, the House is not in session. So how does that all going to work? Will Speaker Johnson finally have to call them back?
Yeah, so Speaker Johnson has effectively let them know the all call. You need to start getting back, whether you can drive or you need to take flights, whatever it may be. You've been gone since mid-September. So it's time to come back. We're going to take these votes quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if the president has to put the squeeze on some of the Republican members to get them to vote for this package. And I understand that there will be a handful of moderate Democrats who will also support it. So there should be enough breathing room for Speaker Johnson to be able to get this through. What's going to happen is the Senate is going to leave after they vote on this package tonight. And then that's really going to force the House members to accept what they've got. Otherwise, we'll be shut down into Thanksgiving. Nobody wants that.
No one does. You mentioned President Trump putting the squeeze on. What role has he played thus far? You also mentioned sort of his favorability ratings, but he seems to have taken a little bit of a backseat, or he's sat back during this process. Is that going to change as we go forward?
I doubt it, only if the Republicans require it. But because the White House has blessed this deal, he shouldn't have to do too much. And quite frankly, he has been absent for the bulk of this shutdown, getting involved only at the end to call for the elimination of the filibuster, which is a complete non-starter on the Senate side. So I don't expect the president's going to have to twist arms too much, but you can never discount the willingness of just a couple of members in the House to make waves when they can. They're going to be in front of media cameras. There's always somebody who tries to be a holdout. So don't be surprised if we get a little bit of a roller coaster here. But the president and the White House will put the pressure on Republicans to move this bill forward, get it 218 votes, reopen the government, and get on with business.
Henrietta, what happened to the ACA subsidies, right? Because the Democrats had said this is what this is about. This is what they staked it on, that they wanted the extension of those ACA subsidies. This bill that's before the Senate doesn't have those ACA subsidies. So how did the Democrats go back home and sort of present this, the ones who have decided to vote for it?
This package wasn't, I don't think, about convincing Democrats to support Democrats. They obviously wanted to see members put up a fight. But this is kind of what happens when you play chicken with somebody who has nothing to lose. The Democratic Party has been in an abysmal state of approval for the better part of a year now. And it's mostly because Democrats dislike Democrats. So Schumer had to have this fight. Leader Jeffries had to have this fight. They've seen their own personal standing improve throughout the duration of the fight within the conference. But what really has occurred is not an extension of the ACA subsidies, but a discussion about it. And so now, if you are disproportionately in a state that voted for Trump, you know that if you're 60 years or older, your cost of healthcare just increased by $1,919 going into next year. And that's because you had a consistent 41-day shutdown premised on the idea of these ACA subsidies. So the whole purpose was to just put this in the spotlight. And now it wasn't just the month of October that we were talking about it, but we're going to have a vote on it at some point in December. And then there's going to be another threatened government shutdown in January. So it's going to stay in the spotlight. And historically, that works as a winning message for Democrats, particularly going into midterm election cycles. And the comp is 2018, when, of course, Speaker Pelosi picked up 41 seats on the House side running on very similar topics. So I think that was the purpose, and that's the takeaway.
What does happen in January, Henrietta?
Well, we have a potential risk of shutting it down all over again going into January 30th. So fingers crossed we don't get there.
And then finally, I wanted to ask you about President Trump's comment on social media over the weekend that everybody's going to get $2,000 because of the tariffs. And it seems like then there was some commentary from Treasury Secretary Besson who said, oh, he just means the tax savings you got from the one big beautiful bill. He doesn't mean an actual check. I mean, what are we to make of that comment?
I don't think it's any secret that the president really liked the rebate checks that went out during his first term. And to put this into some context for you, back then at the height of COVID, when we passed a $1,500 tax rebate and $500 for children, that cost $292 billion. If you want to do $2,000 for everybody now, it's going to cost upwards of $450 billion. And it's a rebate check because we're all paying the tariffs. And just for reference, the tariffs have brought in $89 billion under the IEEPA statute this year. So neither the tariffs will pay for this, nor will anything else unless you want to raise taxes elsewhere. So it's a non-starter of an idea. I think we should expect the president to include it in his fiscal year 26 budget, which will come in February, but we should not be counting on $2,000 checks from the president next year.